Good afternoon, everyone from Toronto, Canada, and good morning and good evening to our audience on Zoom and Facebook Live, joining us from across the world. This is Kehkashan, founder president of Green Hope Foundation, and also the council lead of the Toronto St. Paul's Constituency Youth Council. And joining me today as co-moderators are Tanya, head of Green Hope Bangladesh, and Sterling, program director of Green Hope Canada. So today's episode focuses on another inspiring story of a woman who embodies the words leadership, power, and strength, and we cannot wait to hear about her journey. Now, in our world, women and girls in positions of power often hear the terms woman minister, woman president, woman CEO, woman leader when talking about their positions, instead of being rightfully referred to as minister, president, CEO, and leader. And this assertion encapsulates the challenge of acceptance that women and girls still face in today's scientifically advanced world and in the world's most developed nations. So imagine, therefore, our plight in the global south, where female fetuses get aborted every day as parents still consider the girl child a burden, or when they get burnt for dowry. And we continue to be denied equal pay and employment opportunities across the globe simply based on our gender. And these actions are a consequence of the biases that are ingrained in our mindset by thousands of years of tradition that put men ahead as a superior species and relegate us as subservient followers. And attempts to change the status quo are met with violence, contempt, and derision. And this is felt and seen over and over again in the privacy of our homes, in public spaces, and even in our own parliaments. For given the opportunity, women tend to not only prove themselves as equals, but set the bar even higher. As a passionate proponent of the Sustainable Development Goals, we at Green Hope Foundation know that if there is one goal out of the 17 that needs the greatest attention, then that is Goal 5, gender equality. How can you achieve sustainable development and progress for all when half of humanity still remains fettered and shackled? And this motivated us to launch our virtual series, Women Impacting the World, wherein we are showcasing the lives of our world's trailblazers, where they share their challenges, their successes, and their vision for a more equitable world. Role models are crucial for inspiration as they provide us with the proverbial light that can show us the way out of the dark tunnel of inequality and give us the courage to dare to dream. And today we are privileged and honored to have with us someone who is so successful and a person whom we all look up to. And she is the Honorable Minister Carolyn Bennett, Member of Parliament for Toronto St. Paul's, Canada. Minister Bennett, a very warm welcome to you. We are so excited to have you with us today.
Well, thank you, Kehkashan and Tanya and Sterling. I'm almost embarrassed after your so eloquent introduction that even be considered in the company of the people you're describing, which I guess I still aspire to do better as we come together across generations to work on the gender equality that this series is working on with balance. I'm really pleased to have Sterling here because we can't do this as women. This is about balance. And I just wanted to say, Kehkashan, that my work in Indigenous communities, as I talk to you here from Anishinaabeg, traditional Anishinaabeg territory, and where the Huron-Wendat were here, the Métis came, that we have to recognize that balance and gender equality and the role of women was here before the colonizers showed up and only talked to the men. This is in terms of Victorian times or even before that, they it really was. And then we ended up with the Indian Act and all of those things that actually put women down from their rightful role as leaders in the community, and being able to have that kind of role of leadership that provided the balance as we went through. So I think that is always important to recognize that the kind of misogyny or the idea of superiority of the settlers and their ways was really tipped the balance in Indigenous communities for a very, very long time, such that we end up with missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls because they had lost the power and because of the other effects of colonization. So I think that we need to always look at our history and understand, where did all this come from? The church, the other areas where women were not seen as valuable. It's been a important journey for me to understand as a settler here, that what I didn't know about all of the really important things that were here before the settlers arrived in terms of a way of taking decisions. You and I have talked about this before, thinking 7 generations out. The medicine wheel instead of the medical model. You didn't wait for people to get sick. The pedagogy of learning by doing. Elders instead of elderly, as we've learned during COVID, that Indigenous communities have done so much better because they protect their older people. And so anyway, I just wanted to say that has been so important in my journey, for us to learn from the First Peoples of Canada, and to restore the fancy word I adore now, rematriation, how Indigenous communities can restore that balance that is the leadership and the voices of women.
Absolutely. And it is our hope that we can all learn and grow and continue to educate ourselves, and then ultimately create a world where we do have gender equality, and gender equality actually becomes the 4th pillar of sustainability after, of course, with the economy, society, and the environment, because it is such an important part of our day-to-day lives and of humanity in general. So thank you so much for sharing that with us. Now, Minister Bennett, we all know that you are such a successful individual who has accomplished so much in your field. So we actually wanted to start by asking you, how did you start your journey in the field of politics, and what motivated you to do so?
So I must say that it is I often refer to myself as an accidental tourist in politics. I never ever decided I wanted to do this. I can remember when I was the chaperone at my son's grade 6 tour to Ottawa, looking down into the House of Commons and not having a clue that I would ever be sitting there in one of those chairs. But it really was in the fight for Women's College Hospital to be able to have an institution that was based in feminist principles and putting the patient first, not the convenience of physicians, that there was we led the fight to oppose the merger of the Women's College Hospital with a larger institution in downtown Toronto. We won that fight the first time and a couple of more times. So when I was called to ask if I would run, I said, well, I don't know anything about politics. And the the person on the other end of the phone said, "What do you think you just did?" And I thought, "Oh, is that politics?" I had no idea that fighting for something that you believed in was politics. It just seemed like pretty straightforward that we didn't think this was a good idea, and for the sake of our patients, that we wanted to protect that those flattened structures, inclusive decision making, the things that we understood to be a feminist model.
Absolutely. Wow. That's like, well, as an accidental tourist, you have done so much, and you have well, accomplished so much and helped so many people, and that is so amazing. And I think that your passion for creating change in this country and in the world is truly inspirational. And I hope that, you know, we can all learn from that. And as young people, especially, that is what we want to aspire to be. So once again, thank you for sharing that with us.
Moving forward, what challenges did you face along the way? Were there any challenges that you faced as a woman in the field specifically?
Well, thank you, Sterling. Well, the first time I ran, I lost, so that was very hard. I think that in I ran provincially the first time, and there were and I ran against a great woman who ended up being elected. So one of the challenges was, I think we were starting to believe that it was important to have more women in politics. So one of the challenges in that first race was that sort of narrative of two great women. Oh, that's terrible. Almost like one of us should drop out. But we kept saying, no one's saying two great men run against one another. And so I think that seemed to be hard for people to swallow, that there would be in our riding two women running, one for the Conservatives, Isabel Bassett, who won, and one for the Liberals, that was me. But we were following the amazing Black NDP member of provincial parliament, Zenaida El-Kande. So, it just seemed that I wasn't sure why they were asking that sort of dumb question. And I found that as a bit of a challenge in the early days. I have to say though, as Kekashen had said, as a female doctor, I think I had overcome a lot of that because even when I practiced in Australia, which wasn't at the time perhaps a culture that revered women they were still called Sheilas, and it was women did this and men did that. I think I found that as a woman doctor, when people are sick, they need a doctor, and quite often they don't really care about the sex or the gender. They just want to help, and they'll tell you their stories, and in sometimes it was a bit almost an advantage. I found some of the male patients didn't have to be macho or say it didn't hurt. They could actually come to a more a female person that like not quite coming to mother, but it didn't seem to be as hard. And I think I'd experienced that kind of respect before, and I think I probably didn't expect any less. And as a member of parliament, I think one of my favorite cartoons is still that one, the Punch cartoon of a boardroom where the chair of the meeting says, "That's an excellent idea, Miss Triggs. Could one of the men make it?" And I think that we have all been in those meetings where you'll swear you said it 20 minutes ago, and now a guy says it, and it's all of a sudden new news and a brilliant idea. And I think that unfortunately that still happens a little bit.
That is really unfortunate that yes, of course, that continues to happen. And yes, hopefully like-minded people and passionate people coming together are able to change that mindset, so that we all look at people as leaders and doctors and CEOs instead of putting the label woman before that, because that's what we are. We are leaders and CEOs and doctors, and that's our profession, and there's nothing more to that. So thank you so once again for sharing that with us.
The challenges you faced, some are very common for women. Really, the dominating society is still not favorable for gender equality. So I would like to ask, what kind of support did you have to overcome these challenges?
Thanks for that. And I think in the fight for women's college, um, we just kept thinking about those amazing, strong women that had set up the hospital in the first place. And so I think there was this feeling of not letting the founders down. I think that we really felt, and like so many women, I think we always do better if we are doing it for somebody else. We aren't very good at saying, even whether it's fundraising or you actually are trying to look after your family or your community or whatever. I obviously had I had a very supportive family. My husband used to, even in when I'd be gone for 3 days, because I delivered 3 babies in a row and they hadn't gone well. And, I'd come home and, I think lots of families would say, where have you been? And my husband would treat me like I was Wayne Gretzky or something, and it just had a hat trick that 3 more babies had come into the world, and I had the honor of attending those births. And so in terms of that kind of supportive family, my parents, Peter's parents, I think my boys suffered a little bit, and I never realized how much they'd been hurt when I lost it the first time in politics. They thought that really wasn't fair. But I always had a posse, I think, of strong women. My mom's friends mainly didn't marry, and they, because of World War II, and they had amazing positions as professors and bankers and travel agents, and and I was surrounded by these strong women who all treated my sister and I like we were their daughters, and so they were always giving advice and really supporting me when I at 13 decided I wanted to be a doctor. Not my parents hadn't been to university. Nobody in our family had ever been to university, and yet some of these women obviously had, and they were amazing role models for me. Later, as in the fight for women's college, and then as a member of parliament, there was a group of people that I had come to know and love. Doris Anderson, because of the fight for women's college hospital, had been, the chair of the Status of Women Commission in Canada. Ursula Franklin, the feminist pacifist engineer. It was again the Monique Bégin, who had been the researcher on the Status of Women Commission and Minister of Health in the past. And these were all women that, whether it was tea with Ursula or brunch with Doris or supper with Monique, I had this group of women that it's almost like, I don't like the sports analogies too much, but it's almost like you're in the boxing ring and there's somebody in your corner, literally, that will remind you why you're doing this and send you back into the ring. And so I think that real support has meant so much to me. But also I think that whether it's Kekishan or the young women in all generations that have been part of my life, and I think Kekishan knows I've never liked really the word mentor, because I think quite often I learn more from the young people than they could ever learn from me. But I think it's been that multi-generational support of people who have good ideas and are that you are honored to take those good ideas into somewhere that you can make a difference.
Absolutely. And intergenerational solidarity is something that we believe in so firmly at Green Hope Foundation, because education, it's a two-way street, and we learn from the wisdom of our elders, and we have passionate young people who have new, uninhibited ideas on how to make the world a better place. And as you mentioned, role models are so important, and it's so amazing that you had so many supportive people in your corner, as you said, to be able to help you in your journey forward.
Though the path of challenges are not very easy, but you have passed it very carefully with your family support and your diplomatic intelligence. The things you shared will definitely help us in the way forward of our life. As we know, you served as a physician in so many years. You are a most successful politician and physician. So, how did you connect your expertise as a physician to your current work?
Thanks for that. I quite often have said in many campaigns that the job is very similar. You ask what's wrong, you listen, and together you make a plan. It's the same work, really, and the role is the same. If you have real respect for the patient, you know the patient is the boss. The patient, it's their body. They know their body best, and hopefully, as the physician, we know the system best. And so it's helping understanding that the authority rests with the patient, and that and helping them navigate a system is the role of physician. I believe that's the same job as an elected representative, as a representative of citizens, that the citizen knows what's working and what's not working, what's fair and what's not fair, and that our job is to take their stories, their narrative of something that's not fair or not working. We try and get them the best response possible out of the way the rules are right now, but then we take their stories in to try and get the system changed. And so, I think in healthcare, we were always trying to change the system to make it better for women, better for patients, better for families. And I think that's why I see this job as very parallel in the way that it helped me do my job.
Wow.
With respect.
That is so amazing. And I actually hadn't thought of it like that, the parallels, but that is truly amazing. And I personally, I just feel that that's probably one of the reasons why you have been able to create so much positive change. So once again, thank you for sharing that with us.
So when you gained your second piece of the parallel, being a minister, how did you feel when you were elected as a member of parliament, and of course subsequently as a minister?
I think that it always seems unreal. It sort of feels that, and I think that there isn't a day that I walk onto Parliament Hill without almost pinching yourself, thinking I'm here and I'm one of 338 people, and it is about just total humility of trying to do your best, knowing, as the Prime Minister says, better is always possible, and that you're going to really try and do your best to make change, and to put that lens of the kinds of policies that are the best for the most people, or the people who need it most. And so I think that by us, I think one of the things that you have to make sure that you don't lose your way by being taken with titles or all of that, that as long as you just keep putting people first, and understand that that it is about responsibility, and 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 as you know, I used to say that I was just so grateful for how much I learn every day in this job. But I also remember Paul Martin, when asked the same question, said that he had the authority to make decisions. And I think that as a minister, that authority to actually decide is again humbling, because most of us don't like making mistakes. We don't want to be wrong, and so you question, and then you do your very best job. And so I think it really is about that respect and humility. But I think that, you know, as I say very often, whether it was med students or residents or candidates or new MPs, that if you continue to practice what is, I believe, the most important thing as a professional, which is know what you know what you don't know, and know who and when to go for help, that you stay humble by not fudge. You couldn't fudge as a doctor. You either knew or you didn't know, and you would say, wow, I don't really know what's going on, but together we will find out. And I think that you know, that there are some that get a bit taken with the titles and forget the people that are counting on them and the people who put them there, and that it is about that responsibility on behalf of citizens.
Yeah, that's amazing that you kind of maintain that scientific method of understanding where you currently stand, doing your data collection, and then going into a decision. So I can definitely see how your physician past has definitely helped you as a politician.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think like the world would be a much better place if we all recognize that there are some things that we do know, there are some things that we don't know, and we can always learn every single day. And it's okay to ask for help sometimes. And yeah, it just, the world would just run smoother actually. And a lot of better decisions will be made if we all had that kind of open mindset.
Well, and I think that one of the things that we're, you know, if we go back, Sterling, to the challenges or the you have to be able to change your mind. And I think that, you know, it's like that when the facts change, I change my mind. What do you do? It's like a lab test coming back. Oh, whoops, this isn't working. And we have to change the medicine. And so I think that, you know, when politicians are accused of having changed their mind, and I just go, yeah, you know, the facts change. So we're going to have to take a different course. And I think that that's what we will do on the National Action Plan on Missing and Murdered Indigenous Women and Girls, that we're going to have to keep measuring and adapting until we end this tragedy. And it means working with the families and the survivors to see whether this result is okay, and then what in the plan do we need to change to get better results. And I think that complex adaptive system of, you know, research, policy, practice, but you move from the facts to the policy with the knowledge translation, from the policy to the practice with political will, sometimes lawsuits, and then from the practice back to better questions, better research, that applied research as to whether you're getting results. So that, you know, and I think my respect for citizens means that the more you share that with citizens, that faster that virtuous cycle moves, just in terms of putting vitamin D in the milk, or the kinds of things that once citizens understand the research, they're going to say, why haven't you done it? And so sharing with citizens can help turn that cycle faster.
Definitely,
And
definitely.
I want to say again that it is really a great opportunity for us to have this session with someone who is the member of parliament and the honorable minister as well. We believe the acme of success is to always give us happiness and also give us many more responsibilities. So I would like to ask you, how does it feel when you look back at it and reflect on your journey?
I think again, it's about being humble and saying there's so many things I get to do because I'm a member of parliament, that I think all Canadians and really all citizens of the world should have that opportunity and the ability. I think that when I look back on my journey, that when I was elected in 1997, I had no idea that the last residential school had closed the year before, in 1996. I had no real understanding of an Indigenous worldview. I had no idea in terms of we are all my relations, about how all of us on the planet need to be helping one another in that sustainable way that I have come to understand because, as we said at the beginning, because of my understanding now of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis values and ways of knowing. And so when I think of from a family doctor, I had a little bit of a taste of that with First Nations patients, but then as a member of parliament, as we became part of the Arctic Caucus, and we ended up in our north every summer learning more about that vast part of Canada and those amazing people, Inuit who live there, and even on climate change, that as Shiluwak Klute says, the right to be cold. It's not something that we who live in downtown Toronto think about, the right to be cold. And then I think after the SARS outbreak, I was made Minister of Public Health, where I got to understand that the social determinants of health were going to be more important than what I thought I was doing when I was asked to run in health care provincially. That health really was my passion. That means dealing with poverty, violence, the environment, shelter, equity, education. But closing those gaps, in the socioeconomic gaps of First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, again became totally humbling, as we recognized that the solutions were there, and our job was to support those solutions. And so I feel then, as the in opposition, became the critic for. My friends think that the French word porte-parole is a little bit easier than critic. The Indigenous, my mentors, they never really liked the word critic. It's like you're just sort of criticizing all the time, as opposed to trying to put forward solutions or listen and put forward solutions. And so I think now, 5 years as the minister responsible for First Nations, Inuit, Métis, I think that learning more about the effects of colonization, the really bad effects of paternalism, which is sort of what Nellie Cornway said in 1975 in the first Status of Women Speaking Together report. Paternalism has been a total failure, and at that point, as a Inuit leader and Premier of Northwest Territories, that she was, I think, speaking from two sides of this, as a woman, but also as an Inuit leader. And so how we break out of paternalism into true partnership, I think, has been my journey. And I was thinking in the question that I don't know that I could have done it in any other order. So I think I'm I'm grateful of the experiences that I had along the way, that will hopefully be able to rebuild the trust that was so broken in the relationship with the First Peoples here, and the cynicism that's so earned, and how we can really rebuild this relationship or build a new relationship based on the recognition of rights, respect, cooperation, and partnership, as I say about 9 times a day.
Thank you so much for sharing this with us.
To move forward, as a person in a leadership position, do you feel that people view you differently because you're a woman? Or do you feel that society has evolved to see you as a person, as a leader, regardless of your gender?
I think, again, I have been lucky, I think, in the positions that I've had, that it didn't, the gender didn't really matter. But we also know that there's lots of positions where women aren't there yet, whether that's finance ministers or even prime ministers. That there are, but I think that in the positions that I've held, I think that I have felt respect. I do think it almost loops back to, as a physician, I may get a little bit of an easier ride than maybe other colleagues. I must say that seeing what's happening now on social media is appalling, and I'm sometimes shocked when I get tagged on a post with Catherine McKenna or others that have really been targeted in a such a horrific way. And I was saying to one of my friends this week that when the WHO report in 2000 came out on gender and violence, that it was probably the first time I realized that verbal abuse is actual violence, and that when we now see the verbal abuse in social media, and the yelling and the name calling, and that I am called a few things online, I immediately look to see how many followers that person has. It's usually, in less than, probably sometimes less than 10. In that there's, that little group of people that, like sucker fish, that move around together, and you think a whole bunch of people are saying these things, and then you realize it's the same 10 people. So yeah, I think that I am, we all have to do better in sticking up for one another. And I think the men as allies have been really, really important as we go forward. It's I must admit that when I was chair of Women's Caucus, one of the most important members of Women's Caucus was Irwin Cotler, and that we were never ashamed that if we needed a change and we weren't being heard, if we sent Irwin out to say, women's rights or human rights, or that and if we got the change we wanted, we were grateful for his allyship, and him being able to word it in a different way, and for it not to look, I'm almost embarrassed to say, but not to look self-serving, that of course women want this, that we just are trying to create a better society when you have the gender equality that is in the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah, definitely having an ally within the majority group, being men in this case, can definitely help push your message forward. And I find it's funny that it seems that the people who are kind of the opposite of ally online, being the trolls, often seem to hide behind a fake account, or maybe they're bots or something of the sort. And I'm glad that you do gain some respect with the title of physician, but also saddened the fact that it requires that extra level of education beyond every other minister just to be seen as a, as equal, or as being, just as intelligent as every person in the room.
Yes, and I mean, even as Catherine McKenna, as a lawyer, I mean, I don't understand really why there has been this targeting of certain female members, even this week with Michelle Rempel, being criticized for the dress she was wearing. I just don't understand it, and I think as we call out racism and sexism and for what it is, we will then begin to deal because the allies are always there. I know at the December 6th ceremony after the commemoration of the massacre at École Polytechnique, that we always wanted men to be part of that ceremony. I remember Bill Blair was a Rose Cara Jack Layton, the Robin Badgley, the researcher in violence against women, that again, celebrating the allies, I think also is really, really important.
Yeah, the fact that they are mentioning someone's dress probably means they have very little to speak about in terms of their character. So that's probably a good thing for the minister. Can you share a particular experience that changed your perspective of the world or influenced you drastically?
It's obviously my journey in learning more about First Nations, Inuit, Métis. My role as a settler has changed everything in my life. But it's funny. I always go back to this one incident during the fight for Women's College Hospital, as a little girl that always wanted to be liked. I remember there was one day I was walking down College Street, and one of the board members for the other hospital that we were fighting crossed the road rather than talk to me. And I think that day I remember just thinking, I guess I'm going to do some things that people don't like, and I'm actually okay with that. And it's funny how often I think of that it's not always, it doesn't always help on social media, but I think somehow if you're doing something that people object to, then you are making change because people are in their comfortable little worlds, and they don't want to see change. And I was thinking of, sometimes you say, if you're going to make what would I tell my younger self? The one thing that I think about is that I have always been, somehow we've always thought, those of us on the progressive sides of things, that the people who are objecting just don't get it. And eventually they'll see the light, and eventually they'll be with us. I think it took me a while to figure out in that sort of epiphany is that, no, some of them know exactly what's going on, and they aren't just a boat anchor or dead wood. They are actively pulling for the status quo. They are active, and that you can't underestimate those people that are doing very well with the status quo. And I think that I probably spent a little bit of time like Pollyanna, thinking, oh, well, eventually, the fact, it comes back to being a doctor, that the facts are there. It's really clear that equality helps us all, that vaccines work, But when you see the people, I just think I wish I'd known that a bit earlier.
Yeah, it's a great point about the fact that at times, deciding to remain ignorant actually can be to your benefit. And some people do not want to see the more progressive points.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think, and as you said, there are a lot of things that you do that people might not like you doing that, but as you said, it means you're creating change. And I think as women, especially, there are always going to be naysayers who try to put us down. But then again, we have proven time again and again that we move past those obstacles and are able to just shut them down with the work and the positive change that we're bringing about.
Thank you for sharing your experience with us. Of course, the work you perform changed the perspective of the world, and the world need more like this. You got so many years, and you were named as one of Simpson Women Who Make a Difference in 1990. Besides all of your successful works, you also established the Public Health Network, which is really great. In connection to that, what is the one accomplishment in your journey that you are most proud of?
It's hard to pick one. I think obviously setting up the Public Health Agency has stood us in good stead in this time of COVID. And so I look back the fact that we really just did what Dr. David Naylor's report asked us to do, but we got it all done in 2 years before our government fell. And so I'm grateful that we were able to be able to have that establishment of the Public Health Agency, the network, and appoint a Chief Public Health Officer for Canada. I think the journey of reconciliation is a journey. It's not a destination. But I do think that we are getting there in terms of the advocacy and the awareness that the Truth and Reconciliation Commission have put before us. And I feel in the work that I do every day that I have the honor of doing in those making new friends that I never would have had. I think that's that isn't exactly an accomplishment. It's just a commitment to a journey that is there, that we'll never be able to take it off and say, oh, we've done that. We are, as settlers and colonizers, always going to have to be corrected and to make sure we stay on the path. And I think that is to be able to keep going on that, I think, is not exactly an accomplishment. I would like always to be able to say that the accomplishment was as a mother and a wife and as a daughter. But I would say that my children think that they weren't our priority, and that still hurts me. And I grew up in a flower shop, a family business. My mom's name was on the door. My dad ran the business, and they worked 7 days a week. And I never saw them in December because of Christmas. And I think I thought that was normal. And I think if, I still think, could I have done better in terms of making sure the children who had both sets of grandparents, my aunt lived next door, but there was lots of support, but that you can never argue with feelings. And the fact that they still think or feel that they weren't my priority still hurts me.
Yeah, that's one of the trade-offs that you see when you have people who are being so incredibly successful in their career, doing so much to help every Canadian, but at times it does have that effect on the family life. to continue forward, what gives you the positive energy every day to go out and make a difference in people's lives, like you've been doing for all of us Toronto constituents?
Um, I think of what I always say is that I steal energy from people, right? And particularly from young people. It's funny that when I'm maybe looking tired or people are worried, all of a sudden, if I've been able to be in a university with a group of Indigenous students or with Kekishen and the Youth Council, that all of a sudden your energy picks up again, and that you recognize that that young people, as the Prime Minister says, are not our future. They're our present. They're our conscience, and their perspectives are really important. So I find that really energizing, and I think that I used to teach, in terms of that whether it was about fatigue or whether it was about wellness in terms of women's wellness, and to say that every day you need to make sure you're making active choices of the things that create energy in your life, and making active choices about maybe letting go a few of the things that sap your energy, that those people that really just drain you, that you can actually put that in a bit of a box and recognize it for what it is, and maybe spend a little bit less time on that and more time on the things that create energy. I find that here at the Georgian Bay, where it's big water that's stronger than you are, and that humility of being by the big water really restores me where the sky hits the water and everything's good again. And I have to say, Sterling, that my in-laws had a place in the north of the Georgian Bay, and all of their furniture from that cabin is now in my apartment in Ottawa. And I have a big map like this of the Georgian Bay on the apartment in Ottawa. And so it's like I go home to the cottage every night in my sort of spiritual center, and knowing how restorative it is even to think about the big water, and to be able to make sure that I am able to face the next day, and I also never miss talking to my husband in all the time zones and all the stuff that it is important to just check in with your best friend.
That is so awesome. Wow.
Right.
Thank you for sharing that with us.
Right. What is a normal day in Minister Bennett's life?
So it changes every day. It's a bit like when I was, Tanya, it's a bit like when I was delivering babies, that you have your day on paper, and then you have what really happened that day, and in terms of an agenda, and whether it's all of a sudden a crisis or a media interview or something that happens. But I think that if you think of my typical Monday when Parliament's sitting, I'm up at 5, leave the house at 5:45. I'm on the flight to Ottawa. I then get to my office, that you end up then having a meeting with the whole team, and then move on to prepare for question period, and then the various meetings throughout the afternoon. But it's and then when we're in Toronto, it has been, quite often meeting with constituents in the office. The thing I love the best in my, if not a typical day, but a red letter day, would be when I get into a grade 5 classroom and am able to answer their tough questions about you know, why would you move from being a doctor to a politician, or all of those kinds of things. So, you know, every day is really quite different, but it is a lot now. Of course, it's in l'enfer de Zoom, where you just are, you know, sitting on Zoom calls, and you know, from very early in the morning. At Thursday nights, I have a Zoom call with the Indigenous physicians on the front lines of COVID every Thursday night. That starts at 8:30 because it's after they've finished work in Alberta and other places. So yeah, I think that part of my job is to be in all the time zones, and it's but you know, and then there's you know, we hope to be able to you know, yesterday morning to be at the Witchwood Barns, to be able to see the vendors again, and to actually get my Curtis coffee and have my political advice for the week from you know, those amazing people who are paying attention to the world, and so yeah, it really is. I guess my answer was can't think of a typical day.
Wow. No, but thank you so much for sharing that with us. In this past hour, we have learned so much from you, and I am sure that all of our audience and us as well on this call will be able to take those lessons and ensure that we are able to change our lives for the better and achieve that inner peace and help and then go out there and create positive change in the world. So before we end, I just wanted to ask you, what would be your message to everyone, and especially to girls who dare to dream?
Well, I think part of it would be that for everyone, the piece about it is about vision, value, and risk taking. There has to be a vision of a better world, the values that mean that you around fairness and around how playing fair, and but also getting outside of your comfort zone. And I think this week I talked about when I was a little girl, I was very shy, and I was being dropped off at a birthday party, and I think my aunt thought that I was gonna run back to the car, and she, as I got out, she said, "Don't, you will find someone in there who is more nervous than you, and go and talk to that person, and then she will be very, very grateful." And I think that is about getting out of your comfort zone. It is about just do it, and at the same time you're actually helping somebody while you are taking that risk that they might not want to talk to you or turn away or all of that. So I think that it is about we can't make change if we're not taking risks. That's what bad leaders do. They just their wet finger in the air and see which way the wind's blowing, and then want to take people that way. That doesn't work. So no wet finger in the air. Get out of your comfort zone, and in your heart you'll know what's fair and not fair, and to really not be afraid to speak out about when change is needed.
Thank you so much, Minister Bennett, for sharing with us your journey. And just to say it was inspirational does not really capture it all. And you've created such positive change, and what greater vindication can there be of the people's faith and trust in you as a leader? And it was really motivating to learn about how you overcame your challenges and of your vision for young people, and how it's so important that if you don't know something, you can ask for help, how vision, value, and risk-taking and stepping out of your comfort zones to make change, how important that is to actually be successful. And you truly gave us the courage to dream today. So thank you once again for inspiring us with your presence, and we wish you all the best in all of your endeavors.
Thank you for all the work that you're all doing. This is so important. The, the allyship and the intergenerational solidarity. It's buoyancy for everything.
Absolutely. Thank you once again, Minister Bennett. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us on a Sunday afternoon. We shall see you at our next episode of Women Impacting the World on 20th August. Until we meet again, stay safe, stay connected, and have a wonderful week ahead. Thank you so much, everyone. Bye.
Bye.